Hi, my name is Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and motivational speaker. How hard is it to climb Mount Whitney? Is it possible to climb it in one day? And how tough is that thing? How hard is it to climb the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states? Now, you might think, I would always love to climb a high mountain. It's super tough. I gotta have a ton of gear and expensive stuff. You can totally climb the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states with just a light jacket, running shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt. Now, do I recommend going up on that mountain just like that without any water or preparation? Absolutely not. That's not the smartest thing to do. So what is it like to climb Mount Whitney? There are a couple ways to go about it. One is to simply drive up there, camp overnight, wake up super early, like 3 in the morning, and book it up the mountain. I tried, I think it was it was 3 times before I finally made it, because twice I tried it in the winter, and the snow was literally up to my armpits, and I'm swimming through like a crawling crab or a frog with my buddy Dan King, and we tried it in the winter and it just wasn't happening. I mean, we saw guys with snowshoes at 25-inch, here, let me get back here, 25-inch snowshoes, and they were just sinking. It wasn't happening. Sometimes the weather on Mount Whitney can get really, really rough. So that mountain, I was looking up the data, the current data says, or the measurement of the elevation says the mountain is 14,505 feet tall. I thought it was a little bit higher, but whatever the case, it's really fascinating to think that when you think about all the high mountains in the lower 48, you think of Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, maybe Utah, but you do not think of California. So here's the irony of ironies. Colorado has the most 14ers, meaning mountains above 14,000 in the lower 48 states. However, they do not have the number 1 mountain in the lower 48 states, Mount Whitney. How do you get to Mount Whitney? You drive on the US 395 off the I-15, so if you're driving from LA to Las Vegas, you'll get off on a sign that says Mount Whitney, or not Mount Whitney, US 395, and you'll head north. Sorry, I'm just trying to think geography here. Head north through the Owens Valley to a little town called Lone Pine. And Lone Pine is a really neat place. It's got several pizza parlors and burger places and whatnot. I mean, it's just a small, lonely, I wouldn't say lonely outpost. And that is a great starting base camp from where you can go climb Mount Whitney. Some people will drive up there, stay overnight in a hotel, and then head up in the morning. A lot of people decide, hey, I want to hike Mount Whitney, and I'm going to carry a backpack, camp as high as I can, and then in the morning get up, go tag the summit. We call it tagging the summit, and then come off and then climb down. That's one way to do it, and it is very popular. However, the times that I've been on Mount Whitney in the summer or on the shoulder seasons, I have seen people with this massive 50-pound pack, like utterly miserable. And I so often I ask people, like, what are you carrying in your pack? I mean, you're just staying overnight? Yeah, well, I've got my chair, I've got my wine cooler, I've got my bottle of wine to celebrate. And I'm like, man, okay, so let me give you a couple ideas of the ways to do Mount Whitney right, or do meaning climb, or to do it miserably and maybe have a very unpleasant way. The traditional way to climb Mount Whitney is up a fully marked trail. You can follow this trail all the way up the mountain, go across the 99 famous switchbacks to the saddle, you go up the back side or the west side of Mount Whitney, and then you hit the summit. And that's how you get there. It doesn't require any technical travel. There's no mountaineering skills particularly required. So from that aspect, it's just a hike. But I think the number was, it's about a 22-mile round trip. It's far. It takes a long time. Plus, you start at a place called the Whitney Portal. You're between 6,000 and 8,000 feet, depending on where you camp and start. and you got to go up to 14,000 feet. I mean, it's pretty intense. And as you hike up, of course, the air gets thinner and thinner, and it gets tougher and tougher to breathe, but also the altitude begins starting to affect your head. You might have a headache. I mean, it is not a technically difficult climb. If you take the mountaineer's route up the eastern face, oh yeah, you gotta have ropes. Oh, you don't have to have ropes, but highly, highly recommend a helmet to protect yourself, because rocks fall down and bang, and then you're dead or wish you were dead. So there are different routes up Mount Whitney. Now, one of the challenges of Mount Whitney is because it is the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states, there are permits required to climb it. You have to get a permit from, I think it's the NU Ranger Station. Look it up online, see what the current things are. I'll try and remember to put a link below. But in order to climb Mount Whitney in the season, you have to have a permit. Now, because it's so popular, it's really hard to get those permits on the day that you want. You have to be somewhat flexible. I prefer not to have a permit, so I climb outside the permit dates on the shoulder season in late spring or mid-fall when permits aren't required anymore. But the risk is the weather might not be as good, lightning could come up, I mean, all sorts of challenges. So not only do you have the super long hike, the extreme elevation gain of 6,000+ feet, 7,000 or 8,000 feet gain, I mean, it's pretty intense, 1.5 miles thereabouts. You've got the distance, but you also have to have the permit system. Also, if you need to get water along the way, know that there's a lot of people camping there. And what do a lot of people camping in a fairly concentrated area do? They go to the bathroom. And what happens, even though they're supposed to bring their poo bag out and all that, and stuff happens. So if you plan to create or make water filtered on your way up, know that you're going to probably need, well, I wouldn't say probably, you must filter your water as you're going up Mount Whitney. There's the Life Straw, the Sawyer, I use Aqua Myra pumps, all sorts of options. But when the temperature drops below freezing, the Sawyer, the other pumps and filters, they will freeze. You've got to remember, when you're planning for this, and you're planning on doing that hike, the temperature very likely will drop below freezing. So whatever water filtration and preparation system you have, you must remember that it has to stay unfrozen, otherwise it won't work. And if you're relying on that water to make your climb, it's not going to happen. The times that I've done it, speaking of, drinking this, you might want to bring a warm mug of tea or warm water just to keep yourself going, because it can get chilly. It can be super toasty in the Owens Valley, but by the time you get up to the Whitney Portal and there's this neat little store, it can be pretty chilly. When you get on top of Mount Whitney, it can be downright cold, like cold. Absolutely. So you've got to plan to go from really toasty to utterly freezing. So that means you want to bring layers. So this adds to another challenge of Mount Whitney, is you can go from a very warm climate to a very freezing climate, and you've got to be able to deal with that. You might want to bring some medication for the altitude. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribed medicine. I'm not recommending as a doctor or a medical professional. My experience, you want to talk to your doctor and say, hey, if I go up, what sort of things might I need for the altitude? I use Tylenol, used to use aspirin, but I prefer Tylenol now. Again, not recommending as a doctor, but just telling you it's something you're going to want to consider. One of the things is, when you get to the town of Lone Pine and you look like, where's Mount Whitney? Oh, it's this mountain that's right in your face. That's not actually the mountain. The mountain's actually further back. On the road to Mount Whitney, just by the pizza place, there's a red arrow painted on the street there, the one that leads towards the Alabama Hills. I think, yeah. And you stand there, and it points you straight to Mount Whitney. And you think, oh, that's not Mount Whitney, it's lower. One of the things about that mountain is it's farther back, so it looks lower, but it's not actually. And one of the bummers is when you get on Mount Whitney, it's not like this spectacular peak like the Grand Teton or Tiwanaut or Denali or whatever. It's just this big old pile of rocks, and you got to figure out which rock is the highest. It's kind of funny that way. So getting up there, it's a spectacular achievement, but you've got to be prepared for cold weather. If there is a potential of lightning or you see lightning or thunder, get out. People have been killed on Mount Whitney multiple times. If you hide in the hut up there, you're gonna die, because that hut is not, even though they've got grounding wires, people have been killed on the hut on Mount Whitney. So if you think bad weather's coming in, get out. Mount Whitney will be there tomorrow, and so should you. So is Mount Whitney a challenge? Absolutely. Many people do the overnight hike. I prefer just the day hike. Either way, you have to have a permit to climb there. Call up the ranger station, check it out online. Make sure to get the permit. Follow the law, because if you get busted going up there, they may fine you, but probably not, as long as you're cool. And the rangers will say, sorry, you do not have a permit. You must turn around. But I planned this for months, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. You must have that permit. So get the permit. Otherwise, you got to travel out of season. Trust me, the rangers will catch you. They're very good at their job. Mount Whitney is an excellent hike, is a wonderful experience, but do not underestimate the challenge of altitude gain, weather danger, and distance, time, and your fitness. Make sure you work out, not half an hour, but for hours, because you're going to be hiking from like 3 a.m. till 5 p.m. the next day. Are you ready to hike for 14 hours? Yes, that's what it takes on Mount Whitney. My name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and motivational speaker. Please subscribe to the channel, like and comment on the video. Please click the little button on the right-hand side below the video, expand the text, and support me on Venmo, PayPal, and Patreon. Thank you very much for watching.